Okay, let's take a look at this. So, beta is coming out in a little over a week. So, a lot of this stuff may change by the time beta comes out. But there have been some pretty interesting changes to the warrior tree. We read over them, and then it was like, okay, so they're adding some new talents in. How is this going to affect the layout of the tree? Like, what are they going to be doing to free up some space, or what pathing do we need to take to get access to things like Avatar and whatnot? And there was a change that they didn't really mention that really addresses one of my main concerns about Arms Warrior, which already was looking pretty dang good. I've said this before, like if Midnight came out tomorrow, I would be playing Colossus Arms Warrior. And that's kind of what I have pathed out here. Don't take the actual pathing too much to heart. But I did want to give you guys a little bit of an update to the Arms Warrior tree, because some things have changed, and I think they're good changes, and some abilities have changed. I think it's good changes. So we can just go ahead and start from the top. So just to walk through everything that Warrior has. Some of you guys play Warrior, probably familiar with some of these basic talents, but I'll just go ahead and read through them just because why not? So we have Battle Stance, D Stance. That's our normal stances. D Stance is a damage reduction stance. Battle Stance is a damage increasing stance, and the fact that it gives you a little bit more crit chance and reduces the duration of movement impairing effects. There's a small penalty on damage that you deal, but you also take much less damage in D Stance, so there's that. You can take Fast Footwork for some movement speed. I usually am just going to go ahead and grab War Machine for the increased rage gain. You can take Thunderclap, but you don't really need to now because Rend is AoE, so you can just go ahead and take Leeching Strikes for a teeny bit of Leech. Impending Victory is a great on-demand heal. It just costs a little bit of rage, but it does heal you for a ton, 30% of your max health, which is wild. And that does reset, so it just becomes Victory Rush whenever you kill something, which is pretty sweet. Good old Heroic Leap, which is one of our main movement abilities. It has a 30-second cooldown and gives you a movement speed buff when you take Bounding Stride, which I recommend. If you do take Thunderclap, you can also buff its AoE a little bit. And the slowing effect of Crackling Thunder. Probably won't be doing that, but we are going to take Intervene to zoom around to allies and take a hit for them. Or we can zoom around and absorb some AoE if we wanted to with Interpose. Depends on PvP, PvE. I think that, you know, this might be more comfortable to use in PvE, but this is, you know, standard. You can grab Second Wind, which I think will be great, just restoring health when you're out of combat, and then when you are in combat, it still also heals you for a little bit, but this is mostly just nice for just, you know, whenever you're not taking damage, you start to heal for a ton. Frothing Berserker, not my favorite talent. I don't even know if we need it, but I also don't know where else we would put it. Maybe you could, if you don't use Frothing Berserker, you can maybe put it in Javelineer, you could put it in Fast Footwork. I think we can look at this in a second, but I'm not like in love with that talent. Maybe I just put it there. This is also not the worst thing to have some rage refunded, but I might just do movement speed for leveling or something like that. Who knows? You can do whatever. You have Pain and Gain, which is when you take any damage, you get a very small heal. That heal that you get will be buffed by the new talent Field Dressing. Healing received increased by 3%, and all self-healing increased by an additional 10%. So it's not going to be a whole lot, but it does buff some of the self-healing you do, probably from Second Wind. And from Last Stand, I'll probably buff that too. And if you take this talent in Colossus, it could buff that too. Although those are all like health percent things, so I'm not sure if it would really make an impact. Would Impending Victory too? Maybe. But then it also buffs the healing that you receive in general too, which is pretty nice. So that's cool. Stormbolt, on-demand stun, small range. But, you know, it's just a on-demand single target stun. Rend is now an AoE. So if you go over here, and you just press Rend, you do like a little swirly that looks kind of like a Warbreaker, but it puts dots on everybody. That's pretty sweet, huh? And then you're noticing a proc perhaps, a little Heroic Strike proc. But yeah, Rend is just like a little swirly, bleeds everything around you kind of attack. So, you take that bad boy for sure. It's a 6-second cooldown, but it does everything, right? All targets within 8 yards. For a little bit of damage that makes them bleed, which is cool. Overwhelming Rage, you could take that if you wanted to. I don't usually use that as arms, but for Fury, I think it's kind of fun. But I don't usually take that. Rallying Cry is a small temporary maximum health buff for your team. And of course, you have Field Dressing, like I mentioned, and we have Spell Reflect, just standard. You're going to want this. Reflect spells. Reduce the damage that you take from magic for 5 seconds or until that reflect gets eaten. The one change I really want to see in Midnight and whenever is to make spell reflect a just 1 second or even honestly half-second duration. I don't want it to get eaten by the first like demon, like you know, you're fighting a demonology warlock. They have 13 imps and one imp like little piss bolts you, and instead of you reflecting the mortal coil that comes a millisecond after because you're predicting the mortal coil, you just reflect piss bolt and get coiled. It's really annoying. Or you reflect somebody's like weapon proc or something. Like, you know, you reflect like a fell fire enchant that reflects for 12 damage, then you get hit by a Hodge that you actually timed well and reflected, but it needs to be like a 1 second duration. That really wouldn't be too much to ask. Anyway, there's a new talent called Javelineer where really any ranged ability that you have applies hamstring to all affected targets. It's kind of nice. If you know, Stormbolt a target, Wrecking Throw, but the problem is all of those are really long cooldowns, so it's kind of annoying to use that, but you actually have to go through it to get access to one of your throws, so if you're going to use one of your throws, you're going to be using Javelineer, so that's kind of cool. We have the option between Berserker Shout, which is a way to get your teammates out of fear effects, or you can use Fearless, which is the cooldown of Berserker Rage is reduced by 50%, and Berserker Rage removes all movement speed impairing effects. So on a 30-second cooldown, you can get yourself out of roots, as long as you don't mind getting feared afterwards. But other than that, it's pretty sweet. So you can either get your teammates out of fear or get yourself out of roots. Kind of neat. We also have this talent, Resonant Voice. The effects of your shouts last 20% longer. It's kind of cool. So like Rallying Cry is going to last longer. Fear is going to last longer. Piercing Howl is going to last longer. Kind of really cool. Probably a talent you're going to want to use. So Fear for a little while there was just acting like Priest Fear, where you could just press it and it would just go off. I don't think that was intentional, because now it's not like that anymore. Every time I leap, it kind of like lags out. We got to figure that out. But no, you actually have to have a target to fear now, which is good. That's good. Because it was weird. I was like doing some duels with Ven, and I was like I swear I pressed fear, but it's just like fearing air, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. So they made it so that's not the case anymore. But you do have to choose between fear and Piercing Howl, so that's a little bit weird. But you'll notice that their also movement speed is reduced. That's kind of cool. So yeah, you could have Piercing Howl, which is just a big slow on the enemies, but it also gives you a movement speed buff. And all of these numbers look a little bit weird because they're getting buffed. The duration is, so it's kind of cool. But if you actually fear people for 9 seconds, that's kind of insane. But I don't think it'll be like that. It probably might be about 8 seconds, 7.5 seconds for PvP. That'd be kind of sweet. But yeah, Piercing Howl is mostly like it's the slow, but also gives you a movement speed buff now, so that could be an interesting choice. If you like, I don't know if you're just literally never going to get value out of fear. I feel like this is always going to be the case for PvP, but for PvE, maybe a little speed buff for your homies will be cool. So we have Honed Reflexes, which you probably don't need this, but cooldown to die by the sword, intervene, and spell reflection and Stormbolt, and pummel reduced by 10%, which is a lot compared to before. And interrupting an enemy gives you the damage increase. So I actually like that talent because it combines two of the things that we used to have, and when you combine them, they're actually kind of nice. And I'm not really sure what else I'd rather have up in this area. This is pretty valuable. The extra damage off of a pummel is pretty sweet regardless. So you have your options of Wrecking Throw for absorbs or Shattering Throw for immunes. Armor to the Teeth, you gain strength equal to your armor. You're going to want that. Double time, you're going to want that. More armor and stamina, you're going to want that. Barbaric Training gives you more damage and crit damage on Slam, Whirlwind, Thunderclap. I mean, Slam's cool, but I mean, Slam hits hard in PvP, but not really in PvE, so probably don't usually want to take that. Shockwave is just a little bit of utility. You have to take one of them to get access to these anyway, so you could drop that if you just wanted to do more damage and not press Shockwave. I think that's reasonable, but then you're going to have trouble getting down to this talent, which I think you're going to want that too. So Shockwave is probably going to be standard. Going across, we're not picking up Retaliation. I think that's definitely could be a prot thing. It's new. Whenever an enemy hits you, you strike them back, or a chance strike them back. I'm not sure what chance it is, but there it is. Crushing Force. This was going to be a 2-point talent, then they brought it back to 1. So Mortal Strike deals an additional 5% damage and 5% critical strike damage. We're going to be hitting a lot of crit Mortal Strikes, so that's good. A little strange that we have to go into Cruel Strikes, which is crit chance and execute crit strike damage to get access to anger management. I feel like haste plus anger management would make more sense, but whatever. But anger management's pretty mandatory. Every 20 rage you spend on attacks reduces the remaining cooldown on Avatar and Colossus Smash, which is nuts. It used to just be C Smash, now it's Avatar as well, which would be really, really nice. It would be like, nice, it's gonna line up beautifully now, except not quite, because you're gonna be reducing the cooldown of Colossus Smash by 5 seconds anyway, but doesn't matter. That's a buff. Sort of. The thing is that anger management's not doing is reducing the cooldown of Blade Storm now, so yeah. You're trading it for Avatar, but that's okay. That's whatever. Last Stand is pretty sweet now. When your health is brought below 20%, you marshal your inner strength to increase your maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds and instantly heal yourself for that amount. So what that means is your health doesn't, when Last Stand falls off, your health bar does not go chunk. Your HP reduces, but you don't lose the HP that you gained because it heals you for it too. So that's kind of a nice one. It is possible that you could get killed from 21% to dead and it never procs, but that feels like unlikely, especially if you're like D-stance, ignore pain, you're probably gonna be okay. That's a cool one. I like Last Stand, yeah. For PvP especially. I feel like I was, you know, relatively tanky when I was doing some duels. But I think we were fighting Ven on Affliction Lock, so it's not like he has like crazy burst to like slice you down. Commanding Shout is just out. Nope, it's right here. Anyway, sorry, I gotta quit reading chat. We gotta focus up. So Champion Spear is different now. You throw the spear and you can leap to it. I'll show it to you. It's awesome. And then you also have Battlefield Commander, which I do like, but maybe we'll have talent points to get there, but maybe we won't. But I do like that. But this is really neat. They changed the way it works, and it's pretty sweet. So you throw your spear, and then it becomes active for a little while, like a couple seconds. You leap to the guys. Just blast. So it becomes a like everything that spear did before, right? It's a little bit of a peel, it's a lockdown, but it's also now a mobility skill. So that is sick. Spear was kind of like, like I want it to be cool, but it just doesn't really feel that good. But they buffed the AoE of the spear and they gave you a mobility element too. So that's like, Spear's back, baby. Spear's good stuff. For sure. So before we get into the actual arm side of things, we can take a look at this stuff. But again, just to talk about Battlefield, if we can find a way to get it, that's cool. But I mean, being able to get all 3 of your last talents that are like utility rich is pretty sweet. Commander is cool, but it's not as essential, you know. The best thing about it is probably Intimidating Shout cooldown reduction. But anyway, so for Colossus, it's the same stuff we had before. We have Demolish, which is sweet. Big stacking ability that you charge up and then blast people with. Martial Expert, where critical strike damage of your abilities is increased by 10%. And then block stuff. Crazy. This is one of those things that makes crit really nice for Colossus in particular. One of the many things. We have bleed damage is increased per Colossal Might stack. So it's like, wait a minute. Colossal Might increases the damage of your rend and deep wounds by 5% per stack. Are we still getting 10 stacks? Wasn't it used to be 2? Now it's 5? And deep wounds isn't just like a normal default thing, you just have it. Like, you have to like invest for deep wounds. And it probably does big damn. That's interesting. And you have things that buff it further. Okay, that's interesting for sure. That's gonna be some big bleeds. Anyway, Mortal Strike, Cleave, and Slam. Damage increased by 20%. Colossal Might increases the damage of your Demolish and eventually Overpower. But yeah, Mortal Strike crits. I think is that further down? Anyway, I don't know which talent does which, but anyway, you stack up your damage of your Demolish and Overpower and bleeds with Colossal Might, and crits give you double stacks, which is crazy. So Colossal Might increase damage of Overpower by 5% per stack, and then Mortal Strike. Oh right, here we go. Mortal Strike, critical strikes grant additional stack of Colossal Might. Insane. You can choose between a knock-up Shockwave and an increased stun duration Shockwave. You can choose between a buffed Ignore Pain or a little bit of a cheat death heal kind of thing. I think the Ignore Pain is way better. But you can do the heal if you want. You actually are just bigger and you do more damage and take less damage, which is sweet. The new ones are these are crazy. Demolishes final strike applies deep wounds to all targets at double effectiveness. No, sorry, not double. At full effectiveness, not double. But Mortal Strike and Cleave critical strikes increase your rend and deep wounds damage by 50% for 8 seconds. So when you crit a Mortal Strike, it is going to increase your rend and deep wounds damage by a lot. And Demolishes final strike gives you haste for 10 seconds and increases the critical strike chance of your next Mortal Strike to make it a guaranteed crit. So when you demolish, you're going to be putting a big ass deep wound on people, which is going to tick 50% harder than usual, and give you 10% haste with a guaranteed crit, right? Because this is your next global is Mortal Strike, and then it activates this, right? That's kind of crazy, huh? And you're gonna be having your demolish give 1% more damage taken and 1% less damage dealt to you and by you, depending on how many stacks of demolish you have. That's crazy, huh? This part right here is already in the game. This part is new, but it just makes demolish that much sweeter. Pretty cool. What's also nuts is that you don't I don't even think that you don't have to like max stack demolish. You just press demolish and you get deep wounds, a guaranteed Mortal Strike crit with haste, and buffed damage. So stacking demolish up to a huge amount is cool, but you can just rip it. Like you can open with demolish and you're going to be having a guaranteed crit and big bleeds in the opener, and then you can stack your bleeds up after that. So yeah, stacking up to a big demolish is sweet, but you just send the demolish and it's always good to press it no matter what. When it's off cooldown, boom, send it. Haste, big bleeds, guaranteed Mortal Strike crit, and Mortal Strike hits demonically hard as Colossus anyway, so yeah. All right, so let's look at the arm stuff. So we start off with Mortal Strike. That's your main ability. Hits hard, reduces healing. Overpower is kind of like your when it procs, you press it. Long story short, it's gonna buff your damage over time. I'll show you later on. Sudden Death is also gonna be another ability that you have to take. Just gonna make execute usable periodically. It's kind of nice. Now here's the mwah. Oh, they do care. They are listening. Oh my goodness, look at this. So you said to choose between Die by the Sword and Ignore Pain, but check this out. Bing! Two very different thingies, huh? Two very different thingies. Yo, Rob X, thanks so much, man. Let me hit you with the flex, pumping us up with it, bro. Thank you very much, man. We are taking a look at the Arms Warriors stuff for Alpha right now. It's looking real nice. Arms is looking real good, bro. Looking real good. So this is big. You no longer have to choose between Ignore Pain and Die by the Sword. Now you have to choose between Ignore Pain and Fueled by Violence, which is like, yeah, maybe in PvE you use Fueled by Violence because you're just going to be like deep wounding and rending everything in the universe, and it'll be like a pretty good amount of healing. If you have deep wounds and rend on like 1 or 2 targets, it's probably not going to heal you for a ton. But if you get a fresh Ignore Pain before a go, that's going to make a huge difference in PvP. It's going to be huge. 50% of the damage taken for 12 seconds, or 21k damage prevented, and you're going to have it be buffed by this if you play Colossus. You don't have to play Colossus. I still think Slayer will be great, by the way. I just think Colossus is interesting. And I have 115k HP at level 84 in like third gear, so it's gonna be tanking like, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit less than 20% of your HP in damage prevented, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's a nice little shield, so I think that's gonna be what you take in PvP. This is probably what you take in PvE, so we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing a lot of Fury, but if like I said, I've been saying this, if I had to log in, if I got to log into midnight tomorrow and play for real, I'd be playing Colossus Arms, and that's probably what I'll be playing in the beta. But anyway, so you have a rage generation option here. You can not take it if you want to do some kind of like whirlwindy stuff, cleavy stuff. I think that's probably actually even worthwhile for PvE. A little bit of rage generation is always nice. It just kind of depends on how our rage generation feels. Slamming a guy, this is also 50% additional damage on that slam. So you could either say, all right, I need some rage generation from Blood Surge, where Ren's giving you some rage, or your auto attacks give you more rage after charging. Both those are fine. Cleave and Whirlwind have a 30% chance to make your next Cleave or Whirlwind cost 100% less rage. That's kind of fun. Slamming a primary target when your Cleave or Whirlwind hits 3 or more targets, that's cool too. So I mean, any of these are fine. They're all in a way rage management, right? Either a free Cleave, a free Slam, rage after charge, rage after rending. I mean, it's all good, right? Improved overpower, it has 2 charges, deals more damage. We love that. Execute no longer has a cooldown. If your foe survives, you also get the rage refunded. That's that's kind of a no-brainer talent, I think. Even though Colossus doesn't really use execute that much, it's still kind of nice, you know what I mean? So we'll put it there. Tactician is reworked a little bit. It no longer is a chance to proc per rage used. Now it's just 30% chance to gain a charge overpower when you use an attack that costs rage. So that means that this will not proc Tactician. That's maybe a downside of that in particular. Wait, no, I lied. Because the next thing it says is, I thought so. This effect applies even if the ability's rage cost has been reduced to 0, so never mind. I remember reading that in the notes. So let me use my warrior brain to actually read stuff. Yeah, so that still works against that too. Even if it has been reduced to 0, it still affects it. Great. C Smash is now just Warbreaker. It's just by default the AoE version. It is a big old damage increase for a couple seconds on the targets that you hit with Warbreaker. Here's another crit amp, right? Critical strike damage of your abilities is increased by 10%. We also have 10% increased critical strike damage here. We have increased critical strike damage on mortal strike. So we're gonna like crits. So a guaranteed nasty mortal strike crit. Oh, mamma mia, that's gonna be some big popping damage. I'm gonna like that a lot. We have a choice between how we want to mess around with Slam and Tactician interaction. So you can either make Slam have a 10% chance to trigger Tactician, or you can just make Slam cost less. You can use a talent where Overpower deals more damage to low health targets. You have even more Overpower crit chance and damage here. Overpower and Slam damage is increased, and critical strike damage is increased, and critical strike chance is increased. That's a loaded talent for Slam and Overpower. For your fillers, it'll be critting like crazy. Very cool. Right here, you can kind of beef your Colossus smash up a little bit. We have Birch that says just warming up on it, so I am choosing to personally interpret this talent name as a shout out. Thanks, Blizz. Appreciate that. You guys rock. Even if it's not actually the case, I'm gonna decide that that's the case in my little universe that I live in. So thanks for the shout out there. So I'll be taking that talent to accept the shout out. But you can also take C Smash gives you sweeping strikes, probably pretty good in PvE. Sharpened Blades, this is kind of an interesting talent here. Mortal Strike, Cleave, and Execute damage is increased, and Critical Strike damage is increased by 7%. So it's 7% for 1 point, but then when you put 2 points into it, it just goes to 10. So I feel like it's kind of big value for 1 point wonder. You can definitely move this point around. You could like take it out of the bleed and put it in there or something like that. But yeah, this is more crit strike and chance and crit damage, which is sweet. Or sorry, this is just more crit damage. So there's a lot of crit damage in the tree. So it's interesting. I think we're gonna be building more crit. It's gonna be fun. Cleave, I'm not a huge fan of Cleave historically, but I've been playing a ton of Arms and Remix, and so I'm starting to kind of get acquainted with Cleave. Starting to like it a little bit. This is odd though. This ability is nuts currently, but if it only stacks it to 3 times, that seems pretty whack. So I feel like you're not going to be using the collateral damage. And I don't know why it only stacks at maybe if it stacked up to 30 times, but 3 that's not good. So this is really nice. They changed martial prowess. So this right here was called Soften 'em Up for a while, and it was Slam buffing the damage of Mortal Strike only. But now they went back to martial prowess, and Overpower and Slam increase the damage of next Mortal Strike by 5%, stake up to 3 times. And I would imagine that it's not a separate buff. I think martial prowess is gonna be like Slam or Overpower increase the damage, right? So 1 stack of martial prowess, then we slam them. Then we have 2 stacks of martial prowess. Yeah, so I don't know why I'm like having FPS lag or whatever, but anyway, that's cool. So martial prowess is definitely super nice to have, and it's Slam or Overpower, so you don't have to like stress about like which one you should press. If Overpower is available, hit it. If Slam is the last thing that you have available to press to try to proc some Tacticians, hit it. Either way, your next Mortal Strike's gonna smack, which is great. Dreadnought's nice for some Cleave. It makes your Overpower do like a little bit of AoE on it. I think you could probably pick that or Deep Wounds. If you would rather Cleave with this, or you want to do some single target with Deep Wounds, that's fine. Again, having Deep Wounds, this talent, make Execute inflict Deep Wounds, it gives you a reason to press Execute as as Colossus. It gives you a benefit from doing so, at least. So we have these options right here. Colossus Smash causes your next 2 Mortal Strikes to be guaranteed to trigger Tactician. That's just gonna feel so nice. When you burst, you're just gonna go, you're gonna do Warbreaker, Demolish, Mortal Strike, it procs Tactician, Overpower, boom! Procs Mortal Strike, boom! Procs Tactician, boom! It's just gonna feel really, really good. So, or you can do Colossus Smash reduces the cooldown of Cleave by 33% for 6 seconds, so you can just like hammer cleaves for AoE situations. Single target AoE, real simple stuff. Execute you can use on 35% health targets if you wanted to. You could have Cleave and Whirlwind do more damage to low health targets. This is some Sweeping Strikes options. You can either have Sweeping Strikes hit like it'll last a little bit longer essentially, because now Sweeping Strikes is a stacks thing, not just a duration thing. It lasts for 30 seconds, and if you don't use all the stacks, then you just press it again, and you have Sweeping Strikes until you chew up the stacks. This will give you more stacks, or you can make it so that Sweeping Strikes deals full damage to an additional target next to you, which is kind of cool. Martial Prowess, we talked about that. We have Bloodborne. Your bleed effects deal 10% increased damage and 10% increased critical strike damage. So again, you have more crit amp here. You could easily move this into just your Mortal Strike if you wanted to do less bleed. But then you would also lose access to Battlelord, which I don't think is worth it. Battlelord's sick. So you have to choose between Bladestorm and Ravager. Reasonably, you could play Ravager in PvE as Colossus, but I think it's kind of fun to just Bladestorm stuff like that. I like Bladestorm. It's just fun to press. Critical Thinking, execute critical strike chance increased, and execute refunds rage. This is what you would probably take if you were playing Slayer, for sure. Battlelord overpowers 35% chance to reset cooldown of Mortal Strike. That's just super nice. It just feels so smooth, and it's really good, so probably gonna take that. Bloodletting, Rend and Deep Wounds. Bleed effects last longer, have 5% critical strike chance. Obviously good for Colossus, maybe not necessary for Slayer. Executioner's Precision. Execute, increase the damage of your next Mortal Strike, stacking up. That is not necessary for Colossus. If you wanted to play like Master Tactician just to get more resets, you could. Put the point somewhere else, even in like Sharpened Blades, just for more damage. This, if we're gonna be pressing like Execute sometimes, if it's a button that you actually like because you have a like mandatory sudden death as part of your build, you sudden death something, your next Mortal Strike pops them, maybe it's worth. For PvP, if it's nerfed, you probably maybe play something else, but still, it's kind of cool. The big reason to take Executioner's Precision, though, is because it now gives you access to Avatar, so Precision is pretty sweet. Fatality actually got bumped up a rank. It's like, okay, Fatality is probably not a final tier thing, but you could take it as Slayer. It might be kind of cool for PvP. Again, the damage is always kind of like not that great, and it only really stacks to 5 times now. They keep nerfing this thing, but whatever. Probably not going to take that no matter what, but anyway. The very last tier, you have Master Tactician. Once I get more points, by the way, we are getting more points. This is level 84, so we're gonna have like another point here at least, 2 more points here at least. Maybe it'll be 2, 2, and 2 really. So there's more things that we could take. This is not the final look at what you'll have access to talent-wise. I'm just kind of reading through them. But Master Tactician has a 10% chance to trigger Tactician. That's really nice. We have Mortal Strike crits and Cleave crits will inflict deep wounds. Insane. Really, really nice. And then we have Avatar back. A lot of people were like bummed about Avatar. It's like, oh man, what's back? And it's also on anger management now. So it doesn't give us the root break effect, but it does, you know, it still does some big damn. But it does make you take less AoE damage. That's interesting. And then to review, if you guys hadn't seen it yet, the ARM's Apex talents are sick. So it's Master of Warfare. Overpowers a chance to upgrade Slam to Heroic Strike, which is another reason why I still think that Overpower is a higher priority than Slam. Before, when we had Soften Him Up, it was like, that's kind of weird. I would kind of want to press Slam sometimes to buff Mortal Strike. Nah, press Overpower, because sometimes you can turn it into a Heroic Strike, which does some damage, and you gain a stacker of Master of Warfare, which makes you penetrate 3% of their armor for 30 seconds. Multiple applications of this effect may overlap, so during that 30 seconds, you're going to get multiple stacks. That first stack will fall off at some point, but then, you know, you'll get more. And for every stack that you have of Master of Warfare, it's going to increase what? Mortal Strike and Cleave damage by 10% and Critical Strike damage by 10%. So, again, Mortal Strikes are going to be hitting for like 50% additional crit damage. Like, people are going to be getting deleted by these Mortal Strike crits, and we're going to be penetrating their armor. And whenever we press Heroic Strike, it reduces the cooldown of Colossus Smash. Like, this looks nutty. Like, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think Slayer is going to be awesome too. Don't get me wrong, Slayer is going to be sweet. But I love the fact that, like, I love everything of, like, the way that Colossus is looking to get, like, crazy crit, crazy, like, huge Mortal Strike hits, access to Avatar, really making a lot of use of deep wounds and stuff like that. It's going to be sweet. So, Slayer will be fine. You probably invest more into Execute like you usually do. But, I mean, for me, I like Demolish. I think it's fun. And in the beginning of the expansion, I think you just play what's fun, and then you kind of figure it out from there. But I think overall, ARMS is looking nutty, and the sort of revamped talent tree that we're looking at right now for Alpha is definitely like a few steps in the right direction. I think that the changes they've been making to ARMS right from the beginning have been really interesting, and the sort of pain points and things there's like, I don't want to choose between that. Like with Ignore Pain and Die by the Sword, they've kind of moved. They said, okay, yeah, no worries. Let's split those up. That's great. The way that they have it right now makes sense. It's like you have always access to your one big defensive cooldown, and you have kind of like a choice between what kind of sustain do you want. Do you want healing sustain or damage reduction sustain on a cooldown, right? And that makes sense. Losing Avatar, everyone's kind of like, well, that's kind of weird. Prot and Fury have Avatar. Why not ARMS? And they're like, well, I guess, why not ARMS? So they gave it back, and looks good. And it's on anger management now. Bladestorm, the only way that we're going to reduce the cooldown of Bladestorm is by playing Slayer now. So that'll make Slayer kind of a particularly interesting choice. Could open up Ravager for Colossus to get more of the actual sweeping strikes. Oh, by the way, Cleave and Whirlwind deal 50% increased damage while Ravager is active. So that's another reason to play Ravager as Colossus for PvE. But anyway, I think ARMS looking sweet. If I was logging into Midnight and playing tomorrow, I'd be playing this. When the beta comes out, I'll be playing this. We're still hammering Legion Remix quite a bit, and I'm definitely down to look at Fury and Prot talents as well, but ARMS is what I'm most interested in going into Midnight at the moment, and I think that what they're doing with ARMS in particular looks amazing. I think Fury is still in kind of a weird spot. I think Fury needs some love, so we'll probably have to play some Fury in the beta and try to provide some feedback. For example, we saw that the Fury tier set was all Odin's Fury related. And maybe it's dependent on your hero spec like it is in retail. But if Odin's Fury is what Fury is all about, it's going to be really awkward for Slayer when you can't play Bladestorm because you have to play Odin's Fury. So I would suspect it might be hero talent or hero spec dependent. But anyway, Fury needs some love. There's a couple little bugs with Fury, like you take improved Whirlwind, which makes your next 4 single target attacks strike up to 4 additional targets, and it only gives you 2 stacks of that effect. So I think Fury's in like just a little bit of a more in development stage than ARMS, which I think ARMS is like looking really solid. So we'll play some Fury, and we'll get some feedback going for Fury, but I don't think it's bad. Fury's hero talents are kind of cool. I whenever you do this, you bug it out. Sorry. Fury's hero talents are pretty cool. It's basically just like crit stuff during rec, and you're gonna have a huge stacking strength buff. But anyway, we can go over Fury in a different video. Let's talk about ARMS a little bit and wrap it up there, and then we can go play some Remix. But yeah, this is looking like some real good stuff for ARMS. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to playing the beta on the 11th. That'll be a lot of fun too. All right, let's go remix it up a little bit, and we can continue to look at Fury and Prot tomorrow during, I think, what will be a long maintenance. So plenty of time to do that. Anyway, good stuff, Liz. You guys are getting ARMS going in the right direction. It's looking awesome.